I am your host of the Liberty Moms Show, Delane England. Liberty Moms are the original Secretaries of Defense. We are the real defenders of the home front, and we are there when it comes to defending our homes, our families, and our communities. I am so happy to have you join us today, and I have several really great guests with us. I have another Liberty Mom with us today, and she is Senator Heidi Baldery. She used to be, I don't know, President Heidi Baldery, she used to be with Prosperity,
Americans
Americans
for
for
Prosperity.
Prosperity. I was all of a sudden, I was like, Americans for Prosperity. But she has been on the front lines of fighting for liberty for many years. And she has recently been elected as a Utah State Senator. And I am telling you, game changer. It has been such a blessing. I cannot even express how wonderful it is. We need more principled, really understanding the Constitution senators, and we've got one. We have several now, and we're so delighted to have Holly in the Senate, and we're really, really pleased that we get to have you on our show today, Holly. So, Heidi, thank you very much. Thank you so much for being here. So, Heidi, I want to start with a question. Where did you learn to be so principled? Where did you learn about the constitutional principles?
From the Constitution. Um,
That's such a great source. I
right?
love
I
that
mean,
answer.
yeah, you just keep one, there's one at my bedside, there's one in my purse, there's one in the car.
Yeah.
And, I did years ago, I did a peace officer training for sheriffs and peace officers, a constitutional training for that. I've done I've done different, I think it's, I'm trying to think of which university has a constitution course that I've taken. That's,
Hillsdale has
yeah,
one.
it's the Hillsdale
Yes.
College, which is a
Mhm.
little dry, but it's still good. And then
Uh-huh.
the one that I prefer, not because of content, but just because of interest, is the Patriot Academy, uh,
Yes.
Biblical Citizenship in the Nation. And then there's a book that goes along with that. And then really just living the principles. When you get to practice it, you start seeing where it's not being applied and where it is being applied, and you're just more in tune when you're looking for it.
Oh, that is so great, Heidi. I love it. The best answer I've ever heard is, I got it out of the Constitution. That is so great. That is. But it is, I'm just asking every guest because I'm interested in how people that are principled and know the Constitution, where they learned it from. And most of the time it came from their parents, from their families. So I love that you really self-taught. You went out and you found classes and you said, I've got to learn more. And it shows in what you do. And I love how you said that you can distinguish. And that is really the question that we should always ask whenever we're looking to either pass a bill, vote on a bill like you would, or like when I'm vetting a candidate. I want to find out how aligned with the Constitution are they, how much do they know, and how aligned are they? So that is good feedback and a good recommendation for every delegate, county or state delegate out there. That is how we vet our candidates. We find out how aligned they are with the platform of their party that they are running on, and mostly with the Constitution, because we don't actually take an oath to uphold our platform. We take an oath to uphold the Constitution, regardless of what party you are with. We take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and for you, this Constitution of Utah.
Well,
So, Heidi, oh, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things I like to tell people is, yes, I'm a Republican, but my, I adhere to principle over party or person, because you can say, but I love so and so. They're my neighbor, or they're my state president, or they're my friend, or my spouse. But at the end of the day, we're not voting for a friend. And we're not voting for a party. We're voting for someone who's principled, and so principles have to come first.
Yeah, principles are what it's all about. So thank you. And that's what's so great about having a secret ballot. You don't have to tell anybody, and nobody is supposed to know, and you get to vote who you know is the most aligned with the Constitution. Thank you. Wise counsel. Okay, Heidi, you had a great session. First of all, this is your first session. So,
Mm-hmm.
'cause you got elected when, was it Andrick that stepped
Mm-hmm.
down? Senator Andrick got another job. And so tell us, Heidi, first of all, I'd like to know what made you decide I already know, but what made you decide that you should throw your hat in the ring? There are a lot of people running. So what made you decide to
Uh,
run?
yeah, so there were 14 candidates. One did drop out. There ended up being 13 of us in that race. It was an attractive seat because there was no incumbent. But the main thing that was important, and this is a good lesson, is right, and especially if you're in the member of the predominant faith or you just believe in preparedness, being prepared was critical, right? I didn't just decide, oh, this is open and I'm going to do it. Now there are people and candidates that might fall in that category. There were a lot of good ones in there as well with me, but the important part was that I was prepared. This wasn't something I decided on a whim, but I had to be ready because none of us knew that he was going to resign. And so really it's been over a decade, a lifetime, but the last over a decade of preparing myself and having opportunities for civic service and government service that has prepared me for that time. So I was already working on policy reform with Americans for Prosperity. We worked on tax reform, occupational licensing reform, fighting against OSHA Biden mandates. I'm fighting against, tax increases from our county commissioners and on, et cetera, deregulation from over centralized government. And so, the opportunity to do paid and volunteer work on campaigns and serve in the Republican Party and serve in my county, you know, on my county planning commission as the chair and serve on boards. These are things that have prepared me to get to where I was. But for me, when the opportunity arose, I thought, what could I do more than what I'm doing now? Right now, I am working on policy reform. I'm uniting grassroots activists to act as a block to get things done and be more powerful. Well, from policy reform to policymaker, that was it for me. If I could switch from being a working on the policy reform side to being the policymaker, that was the next level. And so it was just I didn't see how I could not at least go for it because we certainly need better policy.
We do, and I love that, and I knew that was your answer because you have already been engaged. You've already been on the front lines before you even worked for Principles of Prosperity. You
Hmm.
were already engaged. You already knew the issues, which is why they hired you because you
Hmm.
didn't come green. They knew what they were going to get.
Hmm.
And so you've already been there. And so I love your answer. You were already prepared. And that is great, a great answer for anyone who's thinking about they want to get engaged. The best way to do it, even if you have a lot of money or name recognition, the best way is get in and do some volunteering. Get up and go up to the legislature. Let your voice be heard. Learn about the bills, learn about the process, but learn about what is happening. Get engaged that way so that if you decide to run or when you do, you are prepared and you understand these principles. And I think that is the most important thing and why you have been such an effective senator. It went so fast so quickly is because you were already prepared, just as you stated.
And,
Okay,
and
so
I just really quickly for whoever's listening out there or watching, I think my story is a story of encouragement because we all have to cut our teeth somewhere. We all start somewhere, and you don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to have a law degree. You have to
in fact,
care,
it's
and
good if you're not.
yeah, and you can educate yourself. Um, but if I can do it, so can you. And I feel like my personal story should really give encouragement to those who are looking to get started, that my story could be their story.
Right, that's great. Okay,
Hmm.
so Heidi, what is one of your favorite bills from this session? Let's start with the ones that you did. Let's start with the bills that you sponsored, and then we can kind of branch out from there.
Sure.
What's one of your
So,
favorites?
I was really pleased to get my three bills that I wanted to get through. Within the first 3 weeks, they passed unanimously out
That
of
is
committee
amazing.
in the House and the Senate, and on the floor votes in the Senate and the House unanimously. And again, I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't been prepared. If I hadn't already known every single legislator before
Yes.
I entered those doors. And that's one of the benefits of being involved early is that gives you the opportunity to develop those relationships, which are critical in helping people to feel comfortable sharing their concerns with you. making bills better. As a matter of fact, the bill I'm most proud of was the hardest one to pass. And that's because it was literally going to be a one word change. It was going to change the amount of time that the citizens had to collect signatures from 30 days to 60 days. It was going to be just that one little thing, but it ended up being so much more, and it ended up being even better. So what happened is we had different stakeholders. We had the Utah Taxpayers Association, we had Bountiful City, we had Utopia Fiber, we had Utah Cities of Leagues in Town, and even the Lieutenant Governor's office reaching out to me. And I met with all of those stakeholders, and they all had different issues, and they all wanted different things. The most important part of me in the success story is that it's not that the bill changed so much that I didn't recognize, and it wasn't something that I wanted, but it ended up being something that everyone was okay with, and no one fought against it, and everyone was for it. And that's because I took the time to listen. And as a matter of fact, another important thing to know is, sometimes you have to do things and you don't have the luxury of time, or but in this case, when the bill was proposed to me, they wanted to do some different things, and I said, before I agree to do this bill, let me talk to some of the city council members and mayors in my district. So I did, and when I proposed the changes, they said, okay, we're okay with changing the amount of days to collect signatures. We do not want to lower that threshold. It should be sufficiently hard to overturn representative elected government. Otherwise, we're just a mob, and a mob democracy. And I thought, you know what, I agree with that. So I went back to the Taxpayers Association and I said, I'm willing to run this bill if we keep the 20% threshold for 1 in 5 registered voters needing to sign, but they are okay with giving time. And so, anyway, I won't bore you with all the details, but at the end of the day, we ended up at 45 days, which is still 2 additional days. But really, it ended up being more than those 45 days, because what happened is with this particular bill, local government business license amendments, or excuse me, not that's the wrong one, local referenda amendments, or Senate Bill 47, it says it previously it did not mirror similar codes of dealing with referendum. It was an island unto itself, and there were some parts that made it not good. It didn't have a filing process where other codes of referendum, sections of code, you have to have a filing process, have 5 co-sponsors, and you have to say who you were. And and when it comes to revenue bonds, it didn't have that in the code. It will now. It will
Yes,
now.
and it
Now
should.
we have transparency, and so we had to add that in, and now the bill is more transparent, and people like that. And then the other thing we found out was, when the city councils pass those revenue bonds, your 30 days used to start as soon as they passed it. So maybe you were at that meeting, and it takes you some moral courage or a week or two to decide whether you really want to, put
Jump
get in
in.
get into the fight. And by the time you decide and get organized and file, create a pack, all this pick, your time is already eaten up. You might only have 15 days or 14 or 10 or less to collect signatures, because the clock already started. And so
Right.
what we wrote into the bill to make it better is to say that whether you're collecting signatures manually or electronically, your clock doesn't start until you collect that first signature. So again, what was going to be a one word change changed into something so much better, and everyone's happy. And I'm just really proud of that particular piece. The other two, the one
Okay,
that
I
I,
just hold
yeah,
just one second. I just want to get really clear about your bill, because my understanding was this particular bill wasn't for like regular just change the flag referendum. It was more for a bond. Was it not specifically for
sales tax
bonds?
for revenue, it only applies to
Only,
revenue bonds.
okay, that's what I thought. This just
Mhm.
applies if your city or your county increases your taxes or bonds
Yep.
or some kind of revenue, then you can go do a referendum and say, no, we know we elected these people, but we don't feel like they listen to us and we want our voice to be heard. So it's basically what I would call redress. It's
Hmm.
asking for redress.
Correct.
And that is a constitutional way to say we want to petition to our elected officials to readdress this and we don't like it.
Correct. Yep. So
Okay,
that,
thanks.
yeah, thanks for clarifying. I think it's clear as day to me, but I spent a lot of time on it. So, uh,
Exactly.
right. And then the other two bills, I've got one that I worked with the Libertas Institute, which many of the listeners are familiar with, and that was local business license amendments. And actually, the original bill, and when it became law, was by the former senator, Senator Andrade, and it was commonly known as the lemonade law. And what it did
Right.
is it says if you're a kid who wants to sell lemonade, Pokemon cards, do occasional work, if you're a minor, you do not have to be under the burden or expense of an occupational license or permit. And so that's great, except for how many of you have 18-year-olds like in high school that are seniors in high school? They're
Right.
technically not minors anymore, but
Yeah.
shouldn't they be able to be have that same benefit? And so actually, now it's now changed into law where it's going to be under 19, so that we cover those 18-year-olds who are in high school still, so that kids can be kids. We can encourage youth entrepreneurship, and and let kids have a go at it before all those unnecessary onerous regulations, that kids just frankly don't need to be dealing with.
And
And
I love that bill so much because I love the fact that I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own business. I think it's really important. Several of our children have their own businesses. And, as an educator, I do know that Common Core eliminated every single aspect of entrepreneurship. They do not mention anything about being a business owner or starting a business. Everything is about how to get a job working for someone else. And so our children are not being educated in public school with even the mentality or the idea. And America is the breeding ground of entrepreneurship. It is the place where you can come and you can start your own business. Of course, there are a lot of regulations. I think it's super heavy handed on the government regulations. And I understand that part of that is because we have removed the moral fabric of our society. So we need more masters because there was a day when people did the right thing. They didn't have to be micromanaged and told to do the right thing. They just did the right thing. And so that's a bit of a problem that we have. But I love that because we want to support that that ingenuity and that creativity in our children and just give them every single chance. And yeah, for a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old that's in high school that wants to go out and start their own business and just get their feet wet and get a feel for it. So awesome. I love that. I thought that, I don't think people really see maybe how big that bill is and what a positive impact it does have. And what we were doing is turning our 18-year-olds that are in high school into criminals because they weren't criminals, but we're kind of the law turned them into being a
lawless, yeah.
lawbreaker. Yeah. So that was a great
Mhm.
bill. And
Thank
I'm so
you.
thrilled that it passed.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of occupational license reform. The
Yes,
governor,
you are.
lieutenant governor, when they got put into office, one of the things that they did that I was pleased with was they said we're going to look at occupational license in every industry, and we're just going to kind of break it down chunk by chunk. This year, they looked at mental health. There was an optometry, ophthalmology scope of practice bill. We had some different bills. I've got plans for another one next year in the cosmetology industry. We've got a gal that was referred to me by former Representative Mark Roberts, who who said, "Look, I've got a gal in my area who wants to do a nail school,
Right.
not full cosmetology. With people
Right.
just want to do nails, why
Right.
should they have to go to all the expense, time, and effort to learn all the other things when all they're going to practice is nails?" And so we're going to be looking at that next year. And anyway, I just get excited about this. But I'll tell you about my other bill that passed, and that was the military occupational license renewal amendments. And this is important because there are so many things that government is doing that they shouldn't be doing. It's not the proper role of government. But one of the actual credible and constitutional roles of government is our national and state defense. Whether you're looking at our state constitution or our U.S. Constitution, and uh, the last thing that we need when we have our those service members who are out looking to serve our country. They don't get to choose when they get called up, when they're on active duty, when they're called for deployment, and so they have to leave their families, their jobs to serve us. And
Right.
we don't want them to have to worry about their occupational or professional license expiring while they're gone. And so what this does is it allows them to renew that license. And this is our whether they're our reservists, our National Guardsmen and women, or active duty members, to take advantage of this. And so they have up to 90 days from the date that they finish their deployment to re-up those licenses without penalty and without a fee. Now, if you're a fiscal conservative like I am, you may want to know, well, what is that going to cost us? I can let you sleep easy tonight because it's only a $500 fiscal note ongoing. So I feel good about that, and it is the proper role of government. And so I'm happy to support our military members.
Yes, because it is, I can't even imagine, but I mean, I know Aegis as a business owner, it's really hard to kind of keep on top of that yourself. But then if you're deployed and gone, how do you possibly keep track of it or get it paid or handle that when you're not even in our country or
Yeah.
you're off doing military work? So I thought that was a very, again, very principled, very wise, very supportive of our military, as we should be, and giving them every chance to get things in order. And again, I feel like not doing that is literally kind of turning them into lawbreakers when they're off defending our country and our freedom, and then we're turning them into lawbreakers from some little technicality.
Right.
So I really love the attention that you pay to the little details that make a big difference to people's real life.
So here's the thing to counterbalance that $500 a year ongoing, and that is
Okay,
and now we're to the legislation that I co-sponsored with others. I think I have 11 bills that I co-sponsored with different legislators in the House, or I was the floor sponsor for. And
right.
one of them was Representative Grecius up in Eagle Mountain, and there was a House Bill 77, which was Division of Human Resource Management amendments, kind of a cleanup bill. But basically, when we have programs that the government enacts that aren't being used, we need to get rid of them. And that's what this one does. So what this program does is it allowed for career service employees who've been chosen to be on the, let's say, the governor's cabinet, that they could maintain their career status when they got back to their former position. But it also clarified that temporary employees, which would be anyone classified as hired for less than a year or less than 12 months, does not qualify for the state retirement program. And it's this, and it suspends the requirement for the DHRM or Department of Human Resource Management to provide them training on human resource management to these political subdivisions and charter schools. And it was not once utilized, this program, as a
Really?
state, not one. So this bill removes it. The bill amendment removes it. And that's going to save, let's see, it's going to save us 2,200 this year and 6,500 or 6,500 ongoing. So, there we go.
Wow.
So I made more than made up the difference there. So that's how I feel really good about that.
A double win then for
That's
it's a win
right.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
And
Right,
and then I was also a proud co-sponsor, which is different than a floor sponsor. I was a
right.
co-sponsor of the income tax amendments to reduce our income tax from 4.65% to 4.55%. And
Yes,
I would love to be at 0%. I would love to be at 2 point some odd percent like our neighbor Arizona is. But the reality is, as fiscal conservatives, we have to do the cuts we can afford. And I'm hoping that as we continue to chip away at this, that we will eventually get there. And I'm a proud sponsor of that bill. There's another interesting one I think that the listeners might be interested in, and that is the one that I did with Representative Walt Brooks at House Bill 467, and it's child abandonments amendments. Now we have kind of a unique situation in our state where we have a lot of these polygamous families and the FLDS community in particular, and they've got unique situations where the parents have been forced to leave their children because they need to repent or find themselves, and they're left, and then they try to come back and get their children. They're unable to because they're classified as abandoning their children, right? When these polygamous
Right.
households,
Well, they were
and
kind
so
of forced out. They were kind of forced
exactly they
into it,
weren't.
and then, which I think is by design, but I'm just saying,
Oh,
possibly.
absolutely. So this bill gives the law enforcement clarity so that the people in this situation now have recourse to obtain
Yes.
their children in this unique, very unique situation, which again, not, I mean, there may be other polygamous communities out there in other states, but we have our own share, and this is going to help those parents who legitimately did not leave on their own and want and have rights to get their children back. So I really was a happy sponsor of that bill. Um,
See, Heidi, I just am noticing a theme. See, I'm
yeah.
noticing a theme here, because again, what you did was with because of, I think, intentional, but regardless of whether it's intentional or not, a technicality
Mhm.
by in the code is making a parent who was forced out of the home or left for another reason because of those circumstances, keeps
Mhm.
them from being um, from being charged with child abandonment, which is a really very serious crime. And we
Right.
want parents who are truly have abandoned their children to be charged with that. So we're not trying to not cover for that. But what
Right.
we don't want is, again, creating criminals out of really decent, law-abiding, good people who
Mhm.
find themselves in a weird situation. And so I just really like that, because we always complain. A lot of us complain we have way too many laws that get passed. So I like that a lot of these laws, every one that you passed, was really protecting our freedoms and expanding them, not passing laws to infringe on our freedoms. So I'm noticing that theme with your bills that you did and the bills that you co-sponsored.
Well, you're gonna love the next one then,
I
because
know.
it's a Second Amendment, or not Second
Oh
Amendment,
yeah.
sorry, not Second Amendment. I did support those bills. It was a First
Yes.
Amendment bill, free speech. So I did this bill with the Representative Nelson Abbott, who's an attorney by day
Hmm.
trade,
Right.
and we needed to update our state code to reflect a current Supreme Court decision. And basically, what happened was prosecutors were seeking to unrightfully criminalize speech. And so this bill says they have to establish a standard of recklessness. For example, the defendant spoke without taking into account whether their interlocutor might consider their statement a threat. And because what happened is last year we had a case called Counterman versus Colorado, and it dealt with the intersection of free speech, criminal law, mens rea, and trying to determine whether or not a statement can be a threat. And guess what the Supreme Court found? They got it right. They said that in order for a state to criminalize speech, a degree of recklessness must be proven. In other words, made without any regard to how the recipient of the statement could consider that to be a genuine threat. So, um, this bill let the code reflect this change, and now we're now compliant with the newest understanding of the Constitution, which is that our first rights are protected and that they cannot criminalize unduly our free speech.
That
Um,
is huge. That is so big, Heidi, because that I really see that not just in the state of Utah, but nationwide. That is a very serious problem, and it definitely has crept into the state of Utah. So that is a great bill. Thank you. That is very important. Yeah,
um,
because freedom of speech really encompasses your freedom of religion, because your freedom of conscience to be able to say what you want. I mean, yeah, you can think it, but if you can't say it, do you really have freedom of conscience? So being able to voice your conscience, your beliefs, your closest, most healthily, sincerely felt belief systems, to be able to put it out there, is absolutely essential to freedom. So
yeah,
excellent. Thank you.
you're welcome. Another bill I did with our rules, well, starting out with our rules, with Representative Carrie Ann Lisenby,
Yes.
and it was about gender. Imagine that. Inmate assignment amendments.
That
Um,
is one of my favorite bills of the session. I just have to say I'm really grateful for that bill.
Yeah, so this basically, this creates a presumption that inmates in correctional facilities will be assigned housing based on their biological sex at birth. Um, there is a provision that allows a path for an inmate to be assigned to a housing unit with inmates of the opposite biological sex, only if, very, very strict thing, uh, things are met. So, um, there's a whole security question. There's all these kinds of things, but this is key. And this was actually, um, the department corrected this because they were actually running into these situations, and because it wasn't in code,
Right,
they didn't want to get a lawsuit or have
right.
liability. And
Mhm.
so we cannot let these few bad actors continue to take advantage of a lack of clarity in the law. So this provides the correctional facilities with the statutory authority and guidance to handle these difficult situations. They had county sheriffs across the state asking, "Hey, help us out. We need a law here so that we can, um, have cover." And that's what this bill does.
I'm
Another
so
one,
glad they were reaching out because I think that's really important. Of course, I personally
yeah,
prefer the bill to just be clean, no, under no circumstances. But I did read the bill and I do understand that it is pretty tight. There are, it's very difficult, but I still feel that, this is the problem. Once we have done this, once we have acted as if a person can change their sex, which we know, you don't have to be a biologist or a doctor to know the facts. The emperor's new dress is naked. There is no new dress, that new clothes. There are no new clothes. He's naked. And the fact that we would even legally presume that someone could in any way is ridiculous and sad. And what we should do is people that are suffering from this, they are real people with real pain and real issues. And when that is sincerely held, that belief is sincerely held, they deserve to be helped and be treated, not reinforce a lie, because that never helps anybody. So, but I really appreciate how you and Representative Lisenby worked so hard and did, get a very good bill through. It's
yeah,
very good, and it does lend a lot of protection because I'm hoping I never go to prison, or jail, but I'm not planning to. I don't have anything planned that I would break a law or anything, but we know nowadays you don't have to break a law to go to jail. So,
right.
I certainly would not want to be in a confined place where I can't get out with a biological man, because we know what happens. And that is why we need this bill, because there are bad actors and there are people who fake and lie in order to get in a woman's prison to take advantage of women. So thank you very much. Yeah, and I was really happy that that bill got through.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I probably just have time for one, maybe two more, but
Oh, yes.
another prison one. And this one, actually, the reason I chose to talk about this one is because, I'm a long time, I mean, forever time, pro-life, proud pro-life advocate. And this bill deals with pregnant and postpartum inmates. And we need to protect the unborn. Do babies deserve to live in an incarcerated life? Did they commit the crime? No. So this bill comes in the wake of last year's postnatal and early childhood advisory board, that they were considering starting a nursery, a prison nursery for pregnant and incarcerated women. After a year of going about that, the Department of Corrections came back and said it's impossible for them to even, thankfully, um, have a nursery that would meet the safety regulations in a lockdown facility. Um, and I mean, just for
Right.
example, like the prison can't have bathroom seats. So
Right.
uh, kids can drown in a toilet with, even just a few inches of water. And that's the most
Right.
common death by drowning for toddlers. Um,
Yes.
so the good news is the bill does a couple things, but we need to consider diversion for pregnant women, alternative sentencing options that allow them to avoid a criminal conviction, something besides being in prison. Um, Basically, this diversion program for pregnant and postpartum inmates gets them out of the jails and serving their sentences in other ways, such as at home, so that they can be a present parent. It standardizes the lockdown facilities and prevents the Department of Corrections from establishing a nursery in the prison. So they can't do that. That's important because, again, those safety reasons that we discussed. And then thirdly, it provides, well, okay, it was allowed to shackle pregnant inmates up until they gave birth. Now,
Right.
I know you're a mom, so you know what
Yes.
happens when you get pregnant and you get that
6
swelling.
kids. Yeah. Can't do it shackled.
Yeah,
Horrible.
imagine the shackles go around the wrists, the waist, your stomach, down the legs, and around the ankles. It's inhumane, right? So
It's
this,
inhumane. Yeah.
this bill prevents the pregnant inmates from being shackled once they reach their third trimester. Um, anyway, so again, there was only actually out of all the bills that I co-sponsored was the floor sponsor and the primary sponsor for all passed with the exception of one, and the only reason it didn't is because it didn't get heard, and it was actually fourth on the board when we had signed aye on the last day of the legislative session at midnight, and so it was almost heard, and it was a really good bill. So we'll hope to bring it back next year, and that is the truth in advertising bill that I did with Representative Jake Cobb. And, it basically protects the consumers from false and deceptive acts. And it lists a bunch of, things about campaigning and advertisements and, you know, has a little teeth with the statutory penalties if people do. And so, anyway, that's probably all the bills I have time for to discuss today, because I've got a meeting with Alpine School District,
Yes.
which is the largest in the state, and 87,000 students, and we're looking to split. And there's a meeting that I'm going to go there to consider how we should best split that.
And you are just amazing. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us today, Heidi, or I should say Senator Baldery, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much and hope things go well with that. And I definitely appreciate that you're there at that meeting. So thank you. Have a wonderful day.
I
Appreciate it.
will. You as well. Thanks for the
Thank
opportunity.
you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, stay with us. We're going to be right back. We have another Liberty Mom joining us, and then we're going to be talking about we're going to do a delegate training to train those people who have been elected as county or Senate delegates, and we're going to give you some great training and advice on how to do it. So stay with us. We'll be right back.